The last two important concepts that I want to consider as important for this week are orthopraxy and orthodoxy, as well as the distinction between them. To begin with, you probably have an idea of what orthodoxy is, at least in some other contexts, but you might not have heard of the concept of orthopraxy. To keep things simple, focus on that last syllable, praxy. Now, orthodoxy is often considered the adherence to correct or accepted creeds, especially in religion. Orthodoxy within Christianity is a spectrum wherein different churches accept different forms of creeds and councils, generally speaking. Not universally the case, but generally speaking. In the history of Hinduism, there are 6 schools that emerged before the start of the Common Era. And some of these schools emerged possibly well before the Buddha. Some scholars have questioned whether or not these should be called orthodox or heterodox schools, while Orientalist European scholars tended to refer to them as Orthodox Hinduism. There is a notion that there is strict adherence in orthodoxy. There are institutions, there is doctrine, there is creed. The question is that appropriate for the discussion of the Shadarshana? The Shadarshana might not necessarily be institutions or even schools in that sense. They might actually refer to various paths or streams. In fact, darshana, the word itself, refers to auspicious sight. So Shadarshana refers to 6 auspicious sights and is sometimes translated to streams. This schema was created between the 12th and 16th centuries, much more clearly sort of institutionalized by that point, but that's quite a bit later than their origins. But you do have this sort of institutionalization by the 12th to 16th centuries by Vedantins. It was then adopted later by European and American Indologists, and it does pervade modern understandings and contemporary understandings of Hindu philosophy, so it's an important concept to understand that there are various darshana. In fact, there are 6 of them. Vedanta, we'll talk about Vedanta. Yoga is one of them. We'll talk about yoga, but there's also Mimamsa and Vaisheshika and Nyaya and also Sankhya. We will discuss these as well, but you will focus most on Vedanta and yoga in this particular class, as well as in the readings. But keep in mind that most of the time we're not really talking about orthodoxy when we talk about these. These are 6 streams, not really orthodoxy. So if there isn't orthodoxy in Hinduism, what is an important concept then? I would argue, and I'm certainly not alone in this interpretation, that orthopraxy is much more important in Hindu contexts than orthodoxy. Orthopraxy might refer to the practice of right conduct or the practice of establishing proper ethics. It could be guided by liturgy in a certain sense, or texts or sastras. It could guide practice, it could guide belief, but most importantly, in Hindu contexts, we're talking about astika and nastika. In these contexts, astika are those who accept the authority of the Vedas, and nastika are those who do not accept the authority of the Vedas. It should be noted that such acceptance says nothing about what beliefs a person or a group holds, but rather whether they are participating in the preservation and the enrichment of Hindu society writ large as inaugurated in the Vedas. Thus, Orthoprax Hindus are considered astika, while Buddhists, Jains, and Charvakas those who reject the tradition stemming out of the Vedas to a certain extent, based off of various philosophical differences, are considered Nastika. Astika, in some texts, is defined by those who believe in the existence of an Atman, variously translated as soul, self, or spirit, although you should probably stick with the concept of self. While Nastika are those who deny the existence of an Atman, a self, in human beings and other living beings. Read further, you might describe orthopraxic Hindus as those who are traveling to temples, participating in festivals, and ritual action, and so forth, although there's quite a bit of flexibility with that interpretation. As part of our broad discussion here, I'd like you to do a little bit of reflection upon the basic concepts that we've learned thus far. How would this compare to other non-Christian contexts? You might think about Native American religions, various forms of shamanism or animism, African religions, Islamic contexts, shamanism from Central Asia. Do you see any similarities and differences from the concepts that we have discussed thus far? Go ahead and make a quick post and let's get the discussion going.